Hello student, today we are going to start with new chapter, that is chapter number 7, cell structure and its function. Okay, so before going through this chapter, as you all know that what is a cell and what are the different types of the cell, plant cell and animal cells, prokaryotic and eukaryotic cells, okay, which you have learned in your previous classes also. So here I have uploaded some of the videos, okay, which are very common. So before proceeding with this chapter, you should know all the vertical relations and parts of these cells. Okay, so that's why, so there are some videos, please go through these videos. Okay, so for today's lesson and in next class we are going to discuss this in detail. Okay, and there are some assignments also that those assignments you can do from net also, or you can search in your books also. Okay, and you can write your own also if you have gone through the chapter properly. Okay, so there are some videos, okay, please go through this one, then try to complete your assignments. So this will be your today's work. Okay, bye bye.
Welcome to the lesson on Introduction to Cells. In this lesson, you will learn about cells that make up all living organisms. At the end of this lesson, you will be able to define a cell, recall the role of microscopes in the discovery of the cell, illustrate how cells vary in number, and illustrate how cells vary in shape and size.
Hey, who are you?
I am Cello. I represent a cell, the building block of life. Your brother is doing some research about us.
I don't understand. How do you call yourself the building block of life?
Tell me, what is your house made of?
It's made of bricks, of course.
So you can say that bricks are the building blocks of your house.
Right.
The same way, cells are the building blocks for your body. So, in technical terms, a cell is the structural and functional unit of all living organisms. Every living organism, however big or small, is made up of tiny units called cells. Similar kinds of cells together form tissues. Tissues aggregate to form organs. Organs aggregate to form an organ system. For example, epithelia, muscular, and glandular are some of the tissues that form the stomach, which is an organ. Organs like the stomach and the intestine, in turn, form the digestive system. Many organ systems together form an organism. For example, the bodies of human beings consist of digestive system, excretory system, respiratory system, integumentary system, and lymphatic system.
Wow. From such a tiny unit to such complex organisms?
As Victor tries to grasp the importance of a cell in living beings with Cello, we can try answering a few quiz questions.
If you are the building block of all organisms, how come I've never noticed you around before?
That's because I'm generally so small that I can't be seen with the naked eye. We met today because you managed a peek through your brother's microscope. A microscope magnifies the objects so that you can see even the tiny ones clearly. With the help of a microscope, an English scientist, Robert Hooke, first discovered the existence of cells in 1665.
So before that, no one had been able to examine a cell?
Right. Even Robert Hooke wasn't really able to see samples of living cells. He discovered cells by examining slices of cork from the bark of a tree and observing it under the magnifying lens. He was able to see partitioned boxes. He named these boxes cells, since it resembled the cells in which monks lived. In fact, after Robert Hooke, the research on cells had to wait for a long time, till the invention of improved microscopes.
Can you tell me about the improved microscopes?
Yeah, sure. Improved microscopes include compound microscope, dissection microscope, scanning electron microscope, SEM, and transmission electron microscope, TEM. Compound microscopes are used in laboratories to view a wide range of plant and animal specimens.
So what I have here is a compound microscope?
Yes, dissection microscopes are used in laboratories where the observed specimen needs to be cut and viewed.
What about electron microscopes?
Scanning electron microscopes are used to examine the external parts of various organisms. For example, the surface structure of microorganisms like bacteria can be observed through a scanning electron microscope. The transmission electron microscope is used to view cells in further detail. For example, the internal structure of a cell, like the structure of the cell organelles, can be viewed using this microscope.
Let Victor explore the types of microscopes. In the meantime, we have a small quiz for you.
So how many cells does an organism have?
Well, it depends on the organism that you are referring to. There are some organisms that are made of a single cell, and some that consist of trillions of cells.
Trillions of cells?
That's right. Organisms that are made up of more than one cell are called multicellular organisms. For example, a banyan tree or an animal like a dog has trillions of cells. These organisms require a large number of cells to run their complex systems. On the other hand, organisms with a single cell are known as unicellular organisms. For example, look at the specimen of amoeba and paramecium. The bodies of these organisms are made up of a single cell.
Do organisms with a single cell perform all the activities in the same way as multicellular organisms do?
Sure, they do. The single cell in these organisms is built in such a way that it performs all its vital activities, like reproduction, locomotion, digestion, and so on.
Difficult to believe that this one cell can perform all these activities. Wonder how they do it.
Well, take the amoeba for example. It changes its shape to move and eat its prey. Look at this slide now. See those tiny projections on the amoeba? These are called pseudopodia.
Pseudopodia?
Pseudopodia mean false feet. An amoeba engulfs the prey with its pseudopodia and then digests it. Thus, it uses these small projections for locomotion and to capture prey.
And are these the real colors of the cells?
Well, no. The color that you observe under the microscope is due to the stain that is used while preparing a slide. Stains are used to color parts of a cell so that they can be differentiated from other parts.
Let us leave Victor to explore more about staining of slides using different stains.
This amoeba seems to have no real shape at all. Are all cells shaped like that?
Well, no. Cells are of many different shapes. The shape of a cell depends on the function that it performs. Cells can be spherical, round, elongated, pointed, and even branched. For example, a nerve cell or neuron is branched. The branched structure of a neuron helps it to transfer messages to all parts of the body. The white blood corpuscle, WBC, is the only animal cell that changes its shape.
Why? What do WBCs do?
WBCs are responsible for protecting our bodies against invading bacteria and harmful microorganisms. To do this, they need to travel to different parts of the body attacked by such organisms. In order to squeeze through the blood vessels and intercellular spaces, WBCs change their shape using pseudopodia similar to those in an amoeba. On the other hand, red blood cells, RBCs, in our bodies are round cells. The primary function of RBCs is to carry oxygen from the lungs to various tissues of the body. These cells also carry the waste carbon dioxide from various tissues to the lungs so that it can be exhaled through the nostrils. Another example of a different cell shape is found in muscle cells. Muscle cells are spindle-shaped.
That's interesting. What about the shapes of cells in plants?
Plant cells have a definite shape. This shape is determined by the components of the cell. In addition to the component of the cell, plant cells and bacteria have cell walls that provide rigidity. Here is an interesting piece of information, Victor. Scientists studying the shape of cells are of the opinion that learning changes the shape of brain cells. So, as you learn and grow, the shape of your brain cells gradually changes.
Really? Wow! But how about cell sizes? Are all cells microscopic? I would have thought the cells of smaller organisms were smaller than those of big animals, like, say, an elephant?
Cell sizes differ across organisms. However, the size of the cells has nothing to do with the size of the organism. The cells in a rhino's body may not be bigger than the cells in the body of a cat or a rat. In fact, the nerve cells in a rhino are very similar to those in a cat's body. In both cases, the nerve cells are long and branched and are involved in the transmission of messages. However, to answer your other question, there are some cells that can be seen with the naked eye.
Oh, what cells are these?
Well, one is a hen's egg. It is a single cell. You don't need a microscope to see it. You probably eat eggs at breakfast often.
That's true, but I never knew it was a single cell.
The largest cell is the egg of an ostrich, which measures 170 millimeters by 130 millimeters. At the other end of the range, the tiniest cell is a bacterial cell that measures 0.1 to 0.5 micrometers.
Hey, Robert is back. He will want to continue his work on the microscope. So bye for now. But I have a lot of questions for you about the structure and functions of cells. So I'll be seeing you again soon.
Sure. I will join Robert now. While Robert is settling down to work again, we have time for a quick quiz.
Congratulations! You have completed the lesson on Introduction to Cells. In this lesson, you have learned to define a cell, recall the role of microscopes in the discovery of the cell, illustrate how cells vary in number, and illustrate how cells vary in shape and size.
Cells are the smallest living units of an organism. All cells have three things in common, no matter what type of cell they are. All cells have a cell membrane, which separates the inside of the cell from its environment, cytoplasm, which is a jelly-like fluid, and DNA, which is the cell's genetic material. There are two broad categories of cells. The first category is eukaryotic cells. They have organelles, which include the nucleus and other special parts. Eukaryotic cells are more advanced, complex cells, such as those found in plants and animals. The second category is prokaryotic cells. They don't have a nucleus or membrane-enclosed organelles. They do have genetic material, but it's not contained within a nucleus. Prokaryotic cells are always one-celled or unicellular organisms, such as bacteria. So, what are organelles? Organelle means little organ. Organelles are the specialized parts of a cell that have unique jobs to perform. Let's start with the nucleus, the control center of the cell. The nucleus contains DNA, or genetic material. DNA dictates what the cell is going to do and how it's going to do it. Chromatin is the tangled, spread-out form of DNA found inside the nuclear membrane. When a cell is ready to divide, DNA condenses into structures known as chromosomes. The nucleus also contains a nucleolus, which is a structure where ribosomes are made. After ribosomes leave the nucleus, they will have the important job of synthesizing or making proteins. Outside the nucleus, the ribosomes and the rest of the organelles float around in cytoplasm, which is the jelly-like substance. Ribosomes may wander freely within the cytoplasm or attach to the endoplasmic reticulum, sometimes abbreviated as ER. There are two types of ER. Rough ER has ribosomes attached to it, and smooth ER doesn't have ribosomes attached to it. The endoplasmic reticulum is a membrane-enclosed passageway for transporting materials, such as the proteins synthesized by ribosomes. Proteins and other materials emerge from the endoplasmic reticulum in small vesicles, where the Golgi apparatus, sometimes called the Golgi body, receives them. As proteins move through the Golgi body, they're customized into forms that the cell can use. The Golgi body does this by folding the proteins into usable shapes, or adding other materials onto them, such as lipids or carbohydrates. Vacuoles are sac-like structures that store different materials. Here, in this plant cell, the central vacuole stores water. Going back to the animal cell, you will see an organelle called a lysosome. Lysosomes are the garbage collectors that take in damaged or worn-out cell parts. They are filled with enzymes that break down this cellular debris. The mitochondrion is an organelle that is the powerhouse for both animal and plant cells. During a process called cellular respiration, the mitochondria make ATP molecules that provide the energy for all of the cell's activities. Cells that need more energy have more mitochondria. Meanwhile, the cell maintains its shape through a cytoskeleton. The cytoskeleton includes the thread-like microfilaments, which are made of protein, and microtubules, which are thin, hollow tubes. Some organisms, such as plants, that are photoautotrophic, meaning they capture sunlight for energy, have cells with an organelle called a chloroplast. The chloroplast is where photosynthesis happens. It's green because it has a green pigment called chlorophyll. Plant cells also have a cell wall outside of their cell membranes that shape, support, and protect the plant cell. Animal cells never have a cell wall. There are many other unique structures that only some cells have. Here are just a few. In humans, for example, the respiratory tract is lined with cells that have cilia. These are microscopic hair-like projections that can move in waves. This feature helps trap inhaled particles in the air and expels them when you cough. Another unique feature in some cells is flagella. Some bacteria have flagella. A flagellum is like a little tail that can help a cell move or propel itself. The only human cell that has a flagellum is a sperm cell. In summary, remember, eukaryotic cells are plant and animal cells with a nucleus and membrane-enclosed organelles, while prokaryotic cells are unicellular organisms without these things. All cells have a cell membrane, cytoplasm, and genetic material. And even though only plant cells have chloroplasts, both plant and animal cells have mitochondria.
On Earth, there are two major types of cells, prokaryotic and eukaryotic. Prokaryotic cells are the simplest and most ancient types of cells. They were the only form of life on Earth for billions of years before eventually giving rise to eukaryotic cells. If you take a look at prokaryotic and eukaryotic cells side by side, you can see a number of differences. To begin with, prokaryotic cells are a lot smaller than eukaryotic cells and have a simpler structure. But bear in mind that this simple structure is actually a good thing for prokaryotes because it allows them to reproduce very quickly and very effectively. If you were to look inside a prokaryotic cell, you would probably be surprised at how simple it is. For example, prokaryotic cells lack a nucleus. In fact, the name prokaryote actually gives you a hint about its structure. Kary means kernel or nucleus, and pro means before. So basically the word prokaryote means before nucleus. The inside of the prokaryotic cell is basically an open unit with no compartments. There are no membrane-bound organelles. However, small structures called ribosomes are scattered throughout its cytoplasm. The cell's DNA is located in a region of the cytoplasm called the nucleoid region. The nucleoid region is not the same thing as a nucleus because it's not enclosed by a membrane. Prokaryotes also have a cell wall that surrounds the plasma membrane. The composition of the cell wall depends on whether the cell is an archaean or a bacteria, but basically it consists of complex polysaccharides. Prokaryotes also often possess one or more flagella, which are used for movement. In contrast, eukaryotic cells contain a membrane-bound nucleus and other membrane-bound organelles. The name eukaryote also gives a hint about its structure. Eu means true, and remember that karyote means nucleus, so in essence the word eukaryote means true nucleus. Eukaryotic cells are larger and much more complicated than prokaryotic cells. However, they do share a few things in common with prokaryotes. Let's take a look at a Venn diagram to compare prokaryotes to eukaryotes and to also see what areas they have in common. Let's start with their commonalities. Both prokaryotes and eukaryotes have DNA as their genetic material, have ribosomes, have cytoplasm, and have a plasma membrane. Now let's look at some of the ways they differ. Prokaryotic cells are the oldest type of cell. They're small and relatively simple. Eukaryotic cells evolved from prokaryotic cells later. They're larger and much more complex internally. Prokaryotes lack both a nucleus and membrane-bound organelles. Eukaryotic cells have a nucleus and also contain organelles. Prokaryotes are single-celled organisms. Eukaryotes can be either single-celled or multicellular. And finally, the DNA of a prokaryote is usually organized as a single circular chromosome, while the DNA of a eukaryote is organized as linear chromosomes.
Plant cells and animal cells. Plant cells and animal cells. Let's get to learn the difference between plant cells and animal cells. Beginning with cell walls. In plant cell wall is present and is composed of cellulose, whereas in animal cells, cell wall is absent. The shape. Plant cell is rectangular and has fixed shape, whereas animal cell is round and irregular in shape. Vacuole. It has one large central vacuole taking up 90% of cell volume and is filled with watery fluid, whereas animals have small vacuoles, much smaller than plant cells. Chloroplast. Plant cells have chloroplast because they make their own food, whereas animal cells don't have chloroplast. Plastids. Plastids are present in plant cells, whereas plastids are absent in animal cells. Lysosomes. Lysosomes usually not evident in plant cells, whereas lysosomes occurs in cytoplasm in animal cells. Centrosome. Centrosome is absent in plant cells, whereas centrosome is present that helps in cell division in animal cells. Then we have similarities in plant cells and animal cells. Let's begin with endoplasmic reticulum. Endoplasmic reticulum is present in plant cells. In the same way, Endoplasmic reticulum is present in animal cells too. Ribosomes. Ribosomes are present in plant cells. In the same way, ribosomes are present in animal cells too. Mitochondria is present in plant cells. Same way, it is present in animal cells too. Nucleus. Nucleus is present at the periphery of the cell. Nucleus is centrally located in the animal cells too. Golgi apparatus. The Golgi apparatus is present in plant cells. In the same way, Golgi apparatus is present in animal cells. Cytoplasm. Cytoplasm is not as dense as in an animal cell. Cytoplasm is present and is dense in animal cells.